Welcome everyone. My name is Urvashi and I'm a mental clarity coach. Today we are talking about something that many people experience, but very few people truly understand. That is what we call heartbreak. So when a relationship ends, it's not just the person we lose. Sometimes it's the plans we made, the future we imagined, and the version of life we thought we were building. And when that suddenly disappears, it can leave people feeling confused, lost, and unsure of themselves. So, to have a wonderful conversation with me on this topic, I'm really happy to have Miss Sonali here with me. Sonali is an emotional well-being coach, and she works closely with people who are navigating emotional challenges and personal transitions. So, welcome, Sonali. Uh, Together, we are going to talk about what really happens inside people after heartbreak, the thoughts, the emotions, the patterns, and hopefully it will give them some clarity to anyone who may be going through this phase. So, Sonali, I'm really glad you're here. Welcome to this podcast.
Thank you so much, Urvashi, and I'm really glad that we are having this important conversation because heartbreak is something that people experience very quietly. Many people feel they have to deal with it all by themselves. But the truth is, it's a very deep human experience, and understanding what's happening internally can make the journey far easier and smoother.
Very true, very true. I completely agree with you. So let's start. Let's help everyone who is going through heartbreak with this intention. We are starting so that anyone who is out there, because this is something that you don't even share with your friends. You do share, but you understand that nobody's understanding you. You have that kind of feeling. So we are doing this with the intention that this goes out and helps anybody who needs direction and guidance at this point in their life.
Absolutely.
So let's start with something very important. So when someone goes through heartbreak, what is the first truth they usually avoid seeing about themselves or the relationships? If you,
So what happens? Many people initially they focus only on what the other person did wrong, right? Blame others, and that's a very natural reaction because the pain the heartbreak gives is it feels quite personal. But often when people look back honestly, they realize there were moments during the relationship when something didn't feel right.
true,
Maybe their needs were not being met, or their intuition was quietly telling them that something is not right or something is off, but they kept going, thinking or hoping that things would change or things would get better. Yeah.
absolutely, and you know that awareness can be difficult at first because it means acknowledging that somewhere along the way we may have ignored our own feelings. Uh,
Absolutely.
it's not that we were weak. It's just sometimes people do it out of love, out of hope that, if they just ignore this one thing, it will just carry on. They will be able to keep back the relationship because they're really attached to it. But when someone finally sees that clearly, it becomes a powerful moment. It's a moment where they start reconnecting with themselves again. And
Absolutely.
then starts the very big responsibility to actually come out of the phase that they are in.
Actually, yes, beautifully said, Urvashi. And you said responsibility, right? And that responsibility often leads to the next important step. So, I have what does taking responsibility after heartbreak actually mean? And what does it not mean?
Yeah, sometimes people they misunderstand responsibility. They think it is all about blaming themselves.
Yeah,
It's all because of me. I am the one who's responsible. But responsibility is not about carrying guilt. It simply means asking yourself, what can I learn from this experience? Why to
true.
always think negative and beat yourself up that things went wrong just because of you? Because that's not the truth. Yeah, it's about understanding your patterns, your needs, and how you want to show up differently in the future.
Exactly. And responsibility gives people their power back. How important is that? When someone reflects in their choices, their boundaries, their emotional needs, they begin to grow from that experience. So instead of staying stuck in the blame game or guilt or regret, they start building a clearer understanding of themselves and what they truly deserve in a relationship. Yeah.
Exactly, Sonali, very well said. So now I have another question for you, something that is actually the base of everything. I feel this is one major problem that the people who are going through heartbreak are facing, and they all struggle with overthinking. What helps
Yeah.
someone? My question to you would be, what helps someone move from everything feels uncertain and constant overthinking to a place where they can trust themselves again, because they all have lost trust in themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very beautiful question, important as well. So, before I answer that, I would love to mention just one thing here. So, see, when we say overthinking, not all overthinking is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we need to take a major life decision, such as, choosing a university or switching careers or getting
Hmm.
married or moving out of a relationship, thinking long and hard about all the potential outcomes makes a lot of sense. Such decisions, major decisions of life, they actually require thoughtful consideration from our end.
Right.
However, it becomes unhealthy. The overthinking becomes unhealthy when it prevents you from taking action or interferes with your daily life and well being. Yeah. So in heartbreaks, overthinking often happen because people are trying to find answers to questions that may never be fully answered for many reasons. Yeah. So what they do, they replay conversations or events with the
Yeah.
hope that suddenly they'll understand everything. But clarity usually begins when we stop searching for explanation outside and we start to listen to our own emotions, our own feelings.
Yeah, you said
Yeah.
replaying conversations. I understand that happens a lot when people are going through heartbreak, because they want to uh, go back and rewind and find out what went wrong where. And
Yeah.
also, I feel that self trust, it comes back through small steps. When someone starts paying attention to their feelings, making decisions that
Absolutely.
respect their needs, and allowing themselves to process emotions honestly, their mind gradually settles. Clarity doesn't appear overnight. It grows
Yeah, of
slowly through
course.
self honesty. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, absolutely, Urvashi. And it's very well said actually. And I would like to say that what we have discussed so far, very important concepts: awareness, responsibility, moving from overthinking to clarity, all of that. But during that tough phase of heartbreak, people often begin to form new beliefs about themselves and about their relationships. So,
Yes.
my question is, I would like to know what are some very common beliefs that people start carrying after heartbreak that quietly, sabotages their next chapter in life?
Absolutely. People actually carry a lot of limiting beliefs. I've seen people begin believing things like, maybe I'm not good at relationship, or love always ends badly, or I'm not
Yeah,
worthy of unconditional love. These beliefs feel protective because they help people avoid disappointment. Yeah, but they can also close someone off emotionally. You may never feel ready to get into a relationship ever again if you don't get rid of these limiting
yeah.
beliefs. That's what I feel.
Absolutely, yes. And heartbreak also, can easily turn into a very personal story that people carry about themselves. Instead of seeing the relationship as just one experience of life, they start defining themselves by it. And
Yeah.
those beliefs can influence also how we want to show up in the future relationships if those things are not questioned properly on time.
Yeah, and I feel that the fear is something that often keeps these beliefs alive.
True.
So, what I'm thinking is that, what do you think? What role does fear play in keeping these beliefs in place, even when someone wants to move forward?
Yes. Fear. Fear is just a mechanism which tries to protect us. Simple. But you know what? After experiencing pain, obviously the mind would try to avoid getting hurt again in future. So what it does, it builds emotional walls and it convinces us that expecting less or staying guarded or keeping ourselves guarded will keep us safe. Actually,
Yeah.
but
Also, I feel that fear often whispers that staying closed is safer than being open again. People feel that if I am not falling in love, then I will
Yes.
get hurt again. So over time, this protection can limit someone's ability to experience connection and joy, because you you may have a
Absolutely.
heartbreak from one relationship, but then you whatever experience you're gaining from there, you're actually emitting it to all the relationships that you have. So healing involves slowly building
True.
emotional courage again, and the courage to trust life and yourself once more.
Yeah, absolutely, Urvashi. Beautiful. And yes, healing is truly essential and necessary. But you know what, however, I would just add on something. Although healing is essential, but when someone genuinely wants to move forward, still, what appears often is the resistance. So my question is, what are those subtle ways where resistance shows up during the process of healing?
Yes, so resistance is a very interesting word, because when we are trying to attain a goal, when and still we procrastinate, still we don't do things that we really want to do. That is what we call resistance, and it shows up in different ways. Similarly, when we are trying to pull ourselves out of a situation that we don't like to be in, our mind tends to, because our mind is designed to live in survival mode. So it keeps looking for
Yeah,
excuses that, we are not able to do. It doesn't want us to move out of that protection that it has built, right? So sometimes
true.
resistance looks like revisiting the past again and again. People tend to read old messages, they check social media,
Yeah.
stalk their exes, replaying memories. So part of the mind, it wants closure, but this often keeps the person emotionally tied to the past.
Yeah, and also, sometimes the resistance also appears in very quieter way too. Sometimes people they keep themselves so busy with their work so that they don't have to
Right,
sit
right.
with their feelings.
Yeah.
They may ignore or suppress their emotions in the name of strength, maybe
Hmm.
intentionally or unintentionally. But what happens, these feelings, they tend to settle in the system and they are not processed, and they settle in ways of like tension, fatigue, or restlessness. And then the healing part, which is so important, healing begins when we allow ourselves to feel honestly instead of distracting ourselves from what's there inside us.
Yeah, that's why healing is very important. I also feel that once someone begins to process their emotions, the next important step has to be rebuilding self trust, because self trust is something that suffers a lot when you are walking with a broken heart. So, what do you think? What can you suggest some small but powerful actions that help someone rebuild trust in themselves after heartbreak?
Yeah, extremely important. When you say small but powerful, that is important. Start small. Heartbreak is definitely not easy. It's a tough phase for a person. So, small, consistent practices can make a big difference. Right? Journaling, writing down your thoughts, it helps bring a lot of clarity about what you're feeling. I have done journaling, I can vouch for it that it works. And learning to acknowledge your emotions, your feelings without judging them, simply observe them, like let them pass, just like we see the clouds just pass by without judgment. And another important thing is gratitude.
Yeah,
It's not just a word. It may sound very simple, but it has a tremendous power. It holds a lot of power within it when we practice it, regularly. uh, Noticing even the small things in life that still works for us. What it will do is it will help us you to reconnect with yourself again, and you start to begin or to trust your heart again, gradually.
yeah, I totally agree with you, Sonali, because gratitude is one thing that I've practiced during my when I was going through a very tough phase in my life, and it did
Yeah,
wonders for me. So this is something which is tried and tested, and everyone should practice gratitude, whether or not you're going through a tough phase in your life. Also, one thing I would
absolutely.
like to mention here, which for me is very important, is self compassion. It plays a very big role. Looking at
Yeah.
yourself in the mirror and reminding yourself that your worth hasn't changed. Because most of the time, the people, when they are through with a heartbreak, they lose their self worth. For them, they feel the, the biggest thought in their head is, I am not worthy. I am not worthy. So for
Mhm.
them, practicing self compassion, you stand in front of the mirror and you say some good things to yourself. Forgive yourself for anything you regret. And over time,
Yeah.
these small, they may not make sense to you. But sometimes
Hmm.
it is good to do things which do not make sense. After all, you've tried everything that makes sense and still things are not worked out. So why not try something which do not make sense? So over time, these small acts, they rebuild confidence and emotional strength in anyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. Beautiful, Urvashi. How, people don't realize how important self-love, self-compassion is. And thanks for adding that. As we people heal from their heartbreak. Uh, this is a very normal question that comes, you can call it fear or whatever. Many, they start thinking about how to avoid, repeating these painful patterns in their relationship in future. So I would like to know, Vashi, like what kind of emotional maturity or inner growth does someone need to develop so that they stop attracting the same patterns again and again?
Okay. So, yeah, wonderful question, Sonali. I think, from the kind of person you attracted one relationship and that relationship did not serve you well. So you need
Absolutely.
to understand that you cannot attract a better relationship with the same kind of personality. You got to evolve. And for me, the most
True.
important part is if area is boundaries. Most of the
Yeah.
people they do not know how to set the boundaries for their relationships. Yeah, they enter relationships with good intentions, but they struggle to express what do they need or what is acceptable or what is intolerable, right? So
True.
they fail to communicate. So learning to communicate honestly and respectfully, it makes a big difference. And I feel that another important shift is moving away from people pleasing, because when
Yeah.
you feel that, when you have this belief in you that you are not worthy, you you're scared of losing that relationship. And in that fear, you keep giving more, keep over giving what we say. You keep,
Yes.
pleasing people without even thinking how far you have come. And by the time you realize where are you at that point of time, it's already very late. So when someone
True.
learns to respect their own needs and values, they begin forming healthier relationships. So only let those people in your life who respect you as a person, respect your values, respect your needs. So emotional maturity is not about being perfect, it's about knowing yourself better and honoring what truly matters to you. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
Sonali, we have talked about so many important things, and heartbreak can be one of the most painful experiences someone goes through. I have been through it. You told me that
Yeah.
you have also gone through that. So it can also be, but what both of us have done, we have turned our heartbreak into a very powerful moment of self-discovery. And that is why what I want everyone
Yes.
who is watching, if this has come in your life, now this has come for something. You got to identify that reason that brought this
Exactly.
heartbreak in your life.
Yeah, absolutely, Urvashi. You are just spot on. And when you mentioned that it gives us a place to discover ourselves also. It's not just something painful. We can also learn a lot out of it to evolve as a person. And yeah, you're right. And if someone who is listening to this, this podcast is currently going through any sort of heartbreak, it is important to remember that healing takes time. So be patient with yourself. That's the most important thing. Yeah.
Sometimes it can even take years. I mean, yeah, you got
Yeah.
to,
Yes. It has taken me years, Urvashi. So I
me
know
too.
how patient we have to be. So yeah. Yes.
Absolutely. You got to work on yourself. You got to invest in yourself. You got to hire mentors. You got to learn new things. You got to build
Absolutely.
connection, spiritual connection with God. Maybe, sit in meditation and talk to God. Do whatever brings you peace. What I
Exactly.
feel, the end of a relationship, sometimes it becomes the beginning of a deeper understanding of yourself. Because it's
Yes.
only when you know yourself, you're able to build that list. Because right now, if I ask the audience, what is it that is acceptable in front of you, acceptable to you in a relationship, you won't be able to do that, right? But But the point is, because you don't even know yourself, right? Uh, when you have a heartbreak, then you be- begin to develop a deeper understanding of yourself, and that understanding can lead to a much healthier and more meaningful future, according to me.
Absolutely. Beautifully said, actually, Urvashi. I can't agree more to this. And yeah,
So,
it was actually a great conversation, I think, that we had today.
yeah,
Very
we
deep.
have, yeah, very
Yeah,
deep. We covered a lot of points. I know it was quite a short conversation because the people who are in heartbreak, they have very strong focus problem. They cannot focus on one thing for a very long time. That's why we
true.
kept it short. But I hope both of us were able to put across a lot of points which can be life changing and transformational for you if you're watching and you're listening to both of us. And
Mm.
trust me, both of us have gone through heartbreak, and both of us understand how what a beautiful gift it was to us. We may not realize it you may not realize it at this point of time, but
Yes,
uh, a couple of years later, you will thank God for
absolutely.
bringing that phase in your life.
Yes,
So thank you,
beautifully said.
Sonali, for that wonderful
Thanks.
conversation. Uh,
Thank you,
so we
Rishi.
wind up here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.